Welcome back to a special episode of the Bourbon Lens. This is Jake along with Scott, and we have a full house. We have Steve Higdon from BIG Bourbon Club. We have Rob Beatty from Kentucky Black Bourbon Guild. And last but not least, Peggy Stevens. If you don't know that name, you probably don't know bourbon at this point, but we'll say that she is all things bourbon and bourbon women. She's the founder of that as well. So guys and gals, thanks for joining the Bourbon Lens tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Be here.
Well, Rob, we miss you. For everyone that's listening to this episode, Rob was, going to be here, but then he got to, go hang out somewhere nice and warm and got away from us for a little bit. So we're appreciative of you taking some time this evening to hang out with us as well. So why is this? This is an important podcast. This all started actually from Steve's team, Afton, that reached out to us about, getting together and having the important conversations in whiskey. And one of the conversations topics that came up was inclusivity. And that's what, Steve and Big Bourbon has set out to do. And that's what Bourbon Women and Kentucky Black Bourbon Guild has ultimately led the charge in. And these are some of the influential people that are doing that in creating inclusivity in bourbon and talking about the important things that are happening with just making sure everyone feels welcome in this space, because bourbon is not meant for the rich white man that was in the 70s, right? Like that's what it was, labeled towards. It's a spirit that everyone can get behind. It's America's spirit. So Americans should be able to enjoy it, or whomever around the world. Like that is what it's about. And so that's the antithesis of this conversation. So for everyone listening, we're super thankful because this is going to be a conversation for you all and for everyone. So to get started, we're just going to just briefly allow everyone to give a little bit about themselves. So I'm a gentleman. I'm from the South. Ladies first. So Peggy, if you don't mind just telling everyone just a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in Bourbon Women.
Sure. Again, I'm Peggy Stevens, and I've been in the industry for a little over 30 years and really think I have seen a lot of evolution in the category of women, whether they're entering the bourbon market or, as a career or just a consumer that enjoys it. It's changed dramatically, I think, in the last probably 10 years. And that's actually why I started the Bourbon Women Association, because when I started my own company in 2008, I knew from being in marketing previously at different companies, we were kind of ignoring that market, and it's the other half of the population, so we needed to find a way to bring women into the franchise of whiskey and bourbon in general. And so when I started my company, I still noticed that we weren't having a conversation, as you will, with women. And that's when we decided to do something about it. And we started Bourbon Women. And so that was, almost 13 years ago.
Time flies when you're having fun, right?
Absolutely.
No, that's amazing. And creating that space for people to have that conversation. And so, Rob, you've done the same thing as founder and, president of Kentucky Black Bourbon Guild. So what got you passionate about, bringing whiskey and bourbon to the African-American community?
Yeah, and I'm Rob Beatty with the Kentucky Black Bourbon Guild, and time flies when you're having fun. So in 2018, I started a tour company that I took down to the bourbon capital of the world, and we did about 7 tours in the day, and we ended up at the Oscar Getz Museum, where we found that there was images of African Americans on the wall, but there was no card under the wall, under the actual the space. So it's like, what does this mean? Who is this person? What is the connection? So I asked the curator, and the curator said, "Hey, you're going to have to do your own homework and find what is the story behind." So I left out of there with the theme of untold stories, and so I put a group together that could first and foremost find the history of the African American contribution to bourbon, but also get some more marketing out there so that we can see that African Americans actually are top spenders in premium spirits. So I wanted to convert. It's a native spirit. It's American spirit. So I wanted to convert some people to try bourbon because there is there's equity in the African American community to the bourbon industry. So just wanted to really get involved in that space. And from that point, the guild was formed. and started out with just about 5 of us, and now we're over 300 members strong. So fast forward 4 years later, the guild is strong, and we're putting out students into the industry. We're still doing branding with all the different distilleries, and so it's really now we're seeing that there is a diversity and inclusiveness in the marketplace, and we're starting to see some changes in that space.
No, that's really amazing because, if we think about just what Fawn Weaver's been able to find out over the last few years and Uncle Nearest and that story. And so to see that even in Kentucky and not have those answers, like that's amazing that there's work being done behind that. And that brings us to our last guest, just for an introduction. So Steve, COVID really kind of helped you explode a little bit in what you all are doing. So tell everyone a little bit about what BIG Bourbon is and that club and how people, have engaged from not only Kentucky, but around the country.
Yeah. So thanks for letting me come on and join you all. My experience is polar opposite of Peggy's. I never worked in the industry, but I was a very good consumer of the industry for most of my life growing up in Louisville. The BIG Bourbon Club is an accident of me having fun with my 4 boys as they became of age. And I used to do silly bourbon reviews. And if you actually call them a review, I would thank you because they're really not reviews at all. They were silly videos for my kids. And after several years, as they moved away in different places, and I would send them 30 seconds, 60 seconds of goofy videos of me drinking bourbon as if I knew what I was talking about, they thought a couple were funny, and we put one on TikTok. And anyway, 28 million views later, I have no idea why, but for some reason, it worked. And what happened was, this was the summer of COVID. We had more time on our hands than we needed. And after the first video got more than 70,000 views in 2 days, which it blew my mind. But after it did, after about 2 weeks of these videos, and again, I had 60 or 70 just in my phone, so I posted a bunch, and every one of them got bigger than the one before it. And in hindsight, it turned out I was the first one to ever review bourbon on TikTok. So it was first mover by accident. Then I realized a month after that, there's a way you DM on social media, which I didn't know. And I've got 400 questions that people are waiting 3 weeks for me to answer. And it's like, I am the 1-800 number for anything bourbon. It's like, well, how do you, asking me questions that I had no idea what the answer was. Tell me what, this mash bill is and the difference between a rye and a this and a, the proof point when you put it in the barrel and blah, blah, I looked it all up on Wikipedia, and then I'd go answer the question as if I knew the answer. But I quickly realized that there's a need for everybody, whoever everybody is, whether you're a millennial, a Gen Xer, whether you're a bourbon beginner, whether you're African-American, whether you live in Wyoming, doesn't matter who you are. There were these questions from everybody in the world. And everybody has said it before me, and I'll say it too. We're America's native spirit. Kentucky invented it. And I thought it'd be really cool to create a forum for everybody, no matter where you are on the spectrum. But if you simply want to learn about it, or if you're an expert at it, everybody's welcome. So that's what the BIG Bourbon Club is.
No, I think that's amazing. And one of the words that each of one of you all have said, and I don't know if you all have caught on this, but it's this idea of bringing knowledge, right? It's the idea of not making someone feel less than when they join or the conversation. It's being part of that. What's little known about this, while we've been bourbon experts, quote unquote, over the last few years, like when we first picked up this podcast, I'd maybe purchased 1 bottle of bourbon myself, and that was in college for $24. And it was a little thing called Weller 12. But like, that's the only bottle that like I'd ever purchased. I didn't really drink whiskey. I didn't really like it. But
Jake, you drank Weller 12 in college?
Yes.
I was going to say, just time out. I think I was doing like early times in Mountain Dew.
Okay, so
in college.
So you got $25, and like you go and you're like, hey, how much can I spend $25 on? And it was black. It looked cool. It had gold labels.
That was big time, man. $25.
Hey, you do what you got to do because you're like, it just looks cool and it says weeded. We
got a keg of Wiedemann for $29.
There you go. Hey, I'm just saying. That's what I bought at Rite Aid.
We used to make mint juleps with Weller all the time. And I
in college?
When I came back from college, my parents always had a derby party. So
there you go.
Weller mint juleps, and we didn't think anything of it. And it was literally the house bourbon. And now I'm like, wow, to have those bottles back.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is we were there too. We were bourbon beginners, and we've been a part of the conversation. We've adapted like you have over the time, and we've gotten to luckily experience things like we had Peggy on really early on in the podcast. I think in the first 60 episodes as I was looking back today, and we've learned from some of the best whiskey producers and like getting to see those experiences. And so I think it's important to talk about how you all have created those experiences. So, Robert, I want to just ask you, first, when you think about creating an experience for the community that you have created, what should someone expect when they come to Kentucky Black Bourbon Guild, or KBBG as it's also known as, and what kind of education will they receive as they join and become part of the team?
Great question. And so we've become very well known for our experiences. So we have our members get one workshop a month, which is instructor led by our lovely Afton, Distill Living, and our workshops are robust. So we start out with history. We get into some sensology, and we end up with making a cocktail. So we're taking bourbon newbies, and the great thing that we love about it is that we're putting them out there, and now they're experienced consumers over a 12-month period. So the second thing that our members get is that we get a tasting. So we have a 12-month roster of different distilleries. We don't do just Kentucky distillers. We just keep it circulated and try different distilleries. We do the heritage, but we also have done like Smoke Wagon, different ones outside of Kentucky. So every month we have a tasting. So our tasting experiences, we have the vendor come in, or they'll do a Zoom in, but we also pair it with chocolate, walnuts, and we do the whole pairing scenario so that our members are getting a good experience on the different bourbons, but also what it tastes like when you pair it. So we do experiences. We have just last month we had a great Christmas party, and we brought Heaven Hill as a distiller as a event sponsor, and they put on a very well event for us. So our members are used to getting good experiences. But the key thing is to look around the room and look at the diversity in the room. Look at all the warm hands that are being that are shaking, and all the people that are in the room, and it represents our community. So that's what we're proud of. We always try to leave with some education as well. So we educated our members on the different bourbons, also the lineage of the different bourbons, the different names, the different players. So it's a full encompassed experience of not just education, but also being able to experience the different bourbons with the community as well.
Yeah, and I think that's great, creating that experience. And so getting people together and having that warmth, Peggy and Scott and I were chatting, like it's been nice to be able to get back with people in this time. And so Peggy, Bourbon Women, they have, you'll have a conference and people where they get together. And I think that's right around the corner, if I'm not mistaken. So what's it like to get, women in a room and have that conversation about a spirit that may not always be targeted towards the female?
Well, I tell you, it's a lot of energy in that room. It's called the Symposium, and we have over 400 women come into Louisville from a Thursday through Sunday to not only spend time with each other. I think we have like 29 states, represented in that number, but to learn. And education, you hit on it, because, we will do seminars, workshops that are for the geek. We will do seminar and workshops for the culinary foodie. We do excursions out to different distilleries, so that they can have real behind the scenes tours. There's private barrel selections. I mean, literally something for everyone. But the common denominator is always education, and also kind of a mutual respect for each other, because it's not too often that women can go to a place where they're very comfortable sitting in a workshop and asking questions. Because sometimes when it is a mixed crowd, they might go to the back of the room or, not be able to get a question in. So I think that's where they have really, truly excelled, if you will. And now what's kind of interesting is we're seeing more and more men come to Symposium because they say we throw the best events and it's the best run conference. So that's been a lot of fun for us.
Well, I'm sure you have better food than what other things have to do. If you,
I make sure of it because I'm a foodie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like, if you haven't checked out Peggy's book, like this is a shameless plug for her that she didn't ask me to do. She's got a really great book on all of the pairings and conversations that you can have with bourbon. So go look it up. Just Peggy Stevens. She's the author of it. Just go buy the book. It's great. And so we've created these live experiences, with Rob and Peggy, but you've been born out of the COVID world, and a lot of your stuff's online, and, you created that experience that way. So talk to us about how you continue to keep people engaged as you all have exploded in growth over, the last several years, with that virtual presence.
Yeah, so we are a virtual bourbon club is what I call it, and we also have a lot of live local events. But the purpose of making it a virtual bourbon club is the fact that I grew up on TikTok with bourbon 2 years ago. And so all of my followers and all of the people that were asking me questions are all over the world. And so there's no way to reach them unless I did it virtually. So I purchased a white label app and created an app proprietary to the club. We have 4,500 members. We're in 50 states. We're in 13 countries. And so anybody in our club, whether it's the young lady who just joined from Uganda, or whether it's somebody here in Louisville, Kentucky, can pay attention to what's going on within Big Bourbon Club on a minute-to-minute basis, an hour-to-hour, day-to-day, just by being on the app. It's like Facebook, but it's for the Bourbon Club. We also hold in-person distillery events. We do one a month. We have Heaven Hill coming up in February. We have Four Roses in March. We have the Garrison brothers coming in from Texas just for us in June. We've got Penelope coming in from New Jersey in May. And so we'll hold these live events at my partner, Crest Bride's bar. Joe's Older Than Dirt. We'll have 120 people there live, doing tastings, having fun, loud and rowdy, and having a great time. But we also stream it out for the members of the club, hence virtual. So again, you don't have to be here to participate and take care, or to take part in what we're doing.
Yeah, and one other plug, I was studying up everybody today when I was preparing for the podcast, and if you buy the $125 membership, you actually get 25% off to Joe's Older and Dirt. So you can go and enjoy the space even when it's not a big bourbon event and get a discount. So
here's the greatest disappointment. We've got a lot of members on the premium level that join simply to go get the discount because they hang out there all the time. But we'll teach them how to drink bourbon one day.
Hey, there you go. See, you got to find all the little niches in the club. So going back to you on this next question, Steve, and it's really this idea, more of a difficult question. We've been warm and fuzzy here, but the difficult question is like, what is your barrier to entry that you've seen for someone in your club just getting into whiskey?
Well, probably that's a really good question. I think it's all over the board. To me, growing up in Louisville, my father did not drink bourbon, but when I became of age, I became familiar with it. And it was not unusual for guys that I hung out with to drink bourbon growing up in Louisville, Kentucky. But all the folks that I met at the University of Kentucky and a lot of other places didn't drink bourbon. It was just not part of the regular repertoire of white liquors and beer and this, that, and the other. And as we became older and became more worldly through our careers and meeting other people, it slowly started becoming more in fashion, I guess. But it seems like with my club, I've got such a wide variety of people, ages, geography. I think for my club, most of it's geography. They grew up in Wyoming, they grew up in California, they grew up in Texas, they grew up in all parts of the world, and it's just not on the shelf everywhere. You go into a restaurant and there's Jack Daniels and there's Jim Beam or Maker's Mark, and that's how it is in a lot of places until the last, say, 10 or, I don't know, you tell me, Peggy, 10 or 15 years maybe. And so I think it's just lack of exposure, and all of a sudden it's the cool thing and people want to learn more, and there's not one repository, there's not one place, 1-800 number bourbon to go get easy answers. It's a hard spirit to find answers to. And that's the reason that people tripped over me in TikTok, because there are a lot of people there. And I started talking about answers, not even knowing that people were listening. I think it's more maybe geography as much as anything, what I've seen.
No, I think that's super interesting to think about, because the explosion of craft whiskey is something that probably people know inclusive of the industry, but exclusive of the industry, you probably don't understand that explosion that's happening across the United States. And so that's really, I never even thought about that, to be honest.
Well, and so here's one for you. In 2015, and Peggy, correct me if I'm wrong, I think I'm really close to being dead on right. 2015, well, if my wife hears this, she'll say I exaggerated, but it's just because I don't remember. 2015, I think 6 distilleries made 95% of all the whiskey bourbon in the world. So those are the same brands that they saw if they grew up in Wyoming. There were 30 distilleries in 2015 in America. Today, there's 2,200, to your point. So there are whiskeys in regions of the country that never even had it before. Washington, you name the state. And there's really good bourbon being made throughout the country. And it's new for a lot of people that simply didn't see it before. We have a lot of young folks in the club, and other than the big major brands that we all know, they just weren't familiar.
Yeah, and that comes with a whole slew of issues, and that could be a whole nother podcast on distribution and how the craft distiller can't get outside their state, or they're in a select state or two.
True.
But continuing into this theme, right? So Peggy, going to go to you here.
Sure.
Like for a woman in this spirit, like what's been difficult for women to break through? Because the flavors, my wife hates it, but the flavors, if you get into it and you understand the nuances of it, the flavors are big and bold. They're sweet. They're delicate. They would lean towards some of the flavors that women would like, and women are better at smelling and tasting. Like that's scientifically proven.
Yeah.
And so it's like, why wouldn't they want this luscious spirit? Like what is the drawback? What is that biggest gap that you see for them?
Well, frankly, the barrier to entry was our own industry. And I hate to say that, we have members in every state. We're formally in 16 cities, with branch ambassadors who do programs, et cetera. So I'm not just speaking in a vacuum of my opinion. This is what I hear from all of the women, that if you go to a bar and you're with a man, for example, they would say, order a bourbon and a glass of wine, and the wine sat in front of the woman and the bourbon sat in front of the men. And they say, no, it happens to me and my husband, when we go out. If there are whiskey conferences, I can speak to stories that women tell me at a whiskey conference when they go from booth to booth and everybody's pouring, they have to stand on the fringe because the pours are going, to the first men that come up. So we're really in our own way sometimes. And again, I keep going back to having a conversation with women, because that's what Bill Samuels taught me. Mm-hmm. Actually, when I first started Bourbon Women, he was like, we have got to start this conversation. And he was right. So that's part of the barrier. The other barrier is when a woman's not familiar with bourbon, but they look at it as their dad's drink, or it has the connotation of, harsh whiskey, rock gut, too strong. But what we found, because we do studies through Bourbon Women, is we have debunked the myth that women like sweeter, lighter, fluffier, if you will, kind of pinkify. And we say that that's not true, because when we've done blind tastings across the nation, literally, we have found that women go for the spicier, more robust, and actually the higher proof. The single barrels, barrel picks, they're all over it. We can't keep enough of them because they're after them. So it's about educating the industry and then having the consumer help us get educated in general.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a ton of sense. And it's super interesting to see, like, as women continue to engage in the conversation, what a lot of people know is behind the scenes, a lot of women are running bourbon, like in the industry. They're running stills.
That's one of the bigger things that I've seen in a very positive change, especially in the marketing arena. I think when I started with a major company, it's been over 20 years now, but the C-suite were all men. And there was only one woman in the entire C-suite. In the marketing department, I can think of maybe 2 women probably out of 20, and now I love that female CEOs or CMOs and presidents of company, you mentioned Fawn Weaver, those types of stories that we're hearing. So I think it's starting to rock.
Yeah. No,
More to do, especially on the distributor level.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Sazerac dropped a bomb on us all over the weekend.
Yes, I think everybody's still getting shrapnel out of the.
Yeah. No, I think that's super important. And so, Rob, I'm going to come to you. And I have a thought in my head, and I'm just going to say it to you and see what your reaction is. But when I think of barrier to entry, it's not that bourbon is a spirit that maybe African American community has not been open to. It's been popular culture has shared. Hey, it's high end champagne, it's high end tequila, because in my experience playing football in college and being around top level athletes, when they got to the next level, it was about those things because that's what they heard in their songs and in the videos that they were engaged in. So I'm interested to see, like, do you think it's not because they've been exposed, like the African American community has not been exposed to bourbon, or is it that, they just want to continue the lifestyle that they've seen because that's luxury in a way?
Man, I still say this education. I think that we're going to find that my family, my parents didn't grow up drinking bourbon. And I know when I look around at my different friends and we were, crashing the old man's, liquor case, it wasn't bourbon in there. It was. So we missed the memo when bourbon was taught and in homes and different experiences. It just wasn't in my community. So there's a reboot going on. And so just in my time in the Guild, we're seeing the rise of brands where there's female CEOs. And you're looking at, Uncle Nearest, and you're looking at Fresh Bourbon, and there's the Divine Nine out of Louisville. There's brands that there's actually women that are the CEOs. And so what we're finding in our group is the education that bourbon's too strong. It doesn't have the flavor. So what we're doing is that we're actually same things that Peggy's doing. And Peggy, thank you very much for the scholarship. Peggy actually gave 3 members of the Kentucky Black Bourbon Guild a full scholarship to Bourbon Women. So thank you again, Peggy, for that.
Absolutely. Happy to do it.
And they came back with just rave reviews, and they really told us how bad our organization sucked because of the way Peggy's got years and years ahead of us. We're gonna get there, but the education, guys, and I'll probably just it's kind of a record for me is the educational part, because that's the area that we had to reboot and just kind of change the mindsets. But now we're seeing that the women are the leaders in our organization. We're 65% women. When we have our events, it's the women, and they're eager to learn. They're the first to show up, and nothing against my fellas, but it is what it is, and they like the high rise. And so it's not, let's just, we're going to start you with the 80 proof. That's a big no-no for us, because we're really we're kind of watering down the power of the palate. And so we understand women, as they're developing their palate, they're really, really can tell you what we're smelling, what we're tasting. So the barrier entry is very different for my community. It's not what we've seen growing up. It's not what we heard. We didn't see the images in the magazines. Nas, you look at the current pop culture, Nas is still representing, he's still representing Hennessy. And so, like you said, or champagne, it was Moet. It wasn't bourbon. So we're redirecting that now. I have my daughter's 21. When she turned 21, she's tasting bourbon. She's in school right now, and she's in grad school right now, and she's working on her chemical engineering degree.
Hey, Rob.
Future master distiller, I hear.
Rob, yeah? she's already tasted bourbon if she's 21.
Yeah.
She's already drinking.
It's a part of it now. The hipsters brought back bourbon in a lot of ways. So it is what it is. But that's been our barrier interest, is the educational, it's the misconceptions. And we're overcoming that.
Yeah. So, it's there's a lot to overcome, and there's a lot of obstacles. And so as we think about, this space, right? Like, you have countries represented and women represented and African-American community represented. Like, what can we do as as a community? Because I firmly believe bourbon is a community of people trying to get better. There's some people out there that, just like there are in every community, that kind of stink. But for the most part, we're trying to push forward. So like, what are some things that we can do? And Rob, I'll start with you, that we can just can continue to create that inclusivity amongst people. Like what's one thing, practical step that we as podcasters or people that are running clubs and, influential in this industry, like what's one practical thing you think we can do to influence change in the bourbon industry?
I think that as long as we're continuing to put people of color in positions that can make decisions, and not just in marketing, but in executive positions, that is the first step, because there's a lot of executives out there that they're still operating from the same old mindset. And so you have to re-image in those positions and put fresh blood in there that can say, okay, we're missing a whole segment of consumers. I mean, if it's about dollars and cents, you're missing the consumers. So if it's about dollars and cents, you're missing the African American women that represent one of the fastest growing, disposable incomes. So and you're missing the mark is being missed. So I think it's going to take for the shift and the boldness to put people of color in those executive positions that can influence the decisions that are being made. There's still barriers that I'm trying to cross with some of the larger brands, and with all due respect, there's some barriers that have been let down or laid down because we're starting to get some movement with some other brands. So some brands were still having issues trying to get in and get sponsorships, and there's some brands that saying, "Hey, what can we do? What must we do?" But the marketing is there, the education. I'm with the group that is in the archive department of Buffalo Trace, and they give us full reign to pull the archives and take it any direction that we need to tell the story. We're working very closely.
That's wonderful.
With Heaven Hill to do the same. So I mean, we're in the archives. We've got some really, really interesting documentaries that are being developed. There's a book that's being developed, and there's a bunch of things that are coming out of these abilities to get into the archives. But it took someone to say, okay, hey, whatever's in there is in there. We're going to just roll with it. And so that's the story behind the Guild, is that we are honoring the African American contribution, past, present, and in the future. So that's a part of what we're doing as well, along with the education.
No, I think that makes a ton of sense. And for Peggy, from your standpoint, like what's the thing you've been a change agent, right? You are in the midst of being that, currently and today, and Rob's laying that groundwork for KBBG. Like, what's that next step that Bourbon Women or someone like yourself, who is a Hall of Famer and an industry expert, can do?
Well, I first of all, I want to thank you all for having us on, because this is exactly what our industry does need, is to talk about it and build awareness, right? I will say, too, that sometimes I feel like we move too fast and we're not strategic about this subject matter. It's a quick fix and a Band-Aid, to say, oh, well, we'll throw a sponsorship at you or whatever. No. We need long-term reach. And by long-term reach, it's taking us actually a step back and almost taking a helicopter view, of all of the different events and organizations that they could be part of. And when I say they, I mean the industry, to help support, or podcasts to support. And once you take that step back and see, for example, going to a whiskey conference, how many of the speakers are women? How many of the speakers of people of color? How many of the speakers, are XYZ? I mean, it doesn't matter. It's just what's the percentages that we're looking at? Because I know even in my backyard with Bourbon Women, we made a very conscious effort. Our scholarship program that he just mentioned, which we started an actual foundation for, because we're in it for the long haul. We're in it to support through this foundation, and give scholarships to women to get them started. But we also looked, again, at who are we giving chances to in our speakers, across the nation. And so we started bringing in women of color. Our own board, what do we look like on that board? So it's not just a quick fix, a Band-Aid, and throwing money at it. It is a strategic plan that will build momentum.
I mean,
I'm off my soapbox now.
No, I love it because like it's about that relationship, conversation. Rob mentioned that, you mentioned that, like it's the community relationship that you're developing with each other, but also like with the brands to change it. And there's going to be people that move faster than others, right?
Right.
Some of these people some of these industries are very large ships, and rudders of large ships are very small and they take a while to turn. The Titanic hit an iceberg for a reason, right? So, from Steve, from your perspective, we've got some really hands-on in the ground, like you're the newest to the game, but you've exploded in growth. What's that, thing that you think you all can continue to do as Big Bourbon to, eliminate those barriers to entry to allow people to just engage in this native spirit that is bourbon?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think I'll bring a different perspective to it. I'm working with consumers where I think we heard from Rob and Peggy. Peggy worked in the industry for a long time and knows a lot of those execs. And Rob was speaking about bringing people of color into executive positions. But from a consumer perspective, the way I think about it is, when I started in TikTok, the first 3 words that came to mind is bourbon is fun. And if it's not fun for anybody, we're doing something wrong, because bourbon's fun, right?
It is.
And I wanted to name the club Biff, but I thought twice about it. I said, that doesn't work. So I came with BIG, which is bourbon is good. Bourbon needs to be fun, whether you're black or white or female or male, or whether you're whoever you are or wherever you're. If it is not fun, then the industry is letting them down, and we as people in the industry are letting them down. And so I'm just trying to create a portal to introduce them to fun, whether fun is education and learning, which a lot of my people really, really love. The term I use is I want our 4,500 members to have access to get behind the red velvet rope. The red velvet rope is of the distillery, so they want to meet the execs. The stories are oftentimes better than the juice. In many cases, it's true. But when you put really good bourbon together with really good people like Bill Samuels, and it makes it incredible. It's magical. And so I'm trying to connect that and make bourbon fun, whether it's education. Here's an interesting factoid. So when you join the Big Bourbon Club, whether you're a free membership or premium, you get to download the app, and you have full access to the app. The first thing you get when you download the app is a question, and it says, what do you want to get out of the Big Bourbon Club? So we've had thousands of answers. I'm shocked, and I'll tell you what by far the biggest answer is on a pie chart. It's 70%. I thought it was, I want access to rare whiskeys. Any idea what the number one, this is people across the world. They want to meet people who like bourbon and meet new friends. I had no idea. I'm floored. So the people will tell us that the number one thing they've gotten from Big Bourbon, yeah, they've learned, yeah, they've had fun, they've gotten tours and whatever, but they've met people. Bourbon brings people together. It's like a campfire. We all sit around it no matter what we look like, and we never walk away and not have fun. Yeah. If you have marshmallows and a whatever. Bourbon is fun, and if whatever little piece of the slice of the industry we're playing in, if we don't contribute to the fun of it, in my opinion, is probably where we're letting down everybody or not contributing enough to make it better for everybody.
And can I add one thing to that? I go to a lot of whiskey conferences, and I do a lot of training and seminars and food pairings and things like that. And, sometimes I agree with what Steve said, make it fun, because sometimes I think we take ourselves too seriously, especially when I hear even the consumer who are highly educated on whiskey, and they'll tell me, oh, this came from warehouse A on the distillery grounds, row 5, and it's like, whoa. And some of the questions. And sometimes I think we just take ourselves too seriously. When this is a fun industry, there's something for everyone, and it's about the camaraderie of sharing a good drink.
That's exactly right.
Amen. I feel like sometimes it does get too serious. It's really, you got to put yourself out there. And I think to a time when Bardstown Bourbon Company did their World's Top Whiskey Taster, which I was lucky enough to make it to the finals. But we had a variety of people hit us up on Instagram. They're like, I would have never put myself out there to do that. Like, you're a podcaster. Then like, if you did that and you failed, like, you make us look bad. I'm like, no, like I had to record a stupid video, and yes, it was stupid and it was fine. It was like, what did you like about bottled and bond whiskey? I had to Google what bottled and bond whiskey was to like make sure I had the right answer. Right. And, I thought about that, and it was just a ton of fun, because then you get experiences where you put us through like this triangle test that is very difficult, but it teaches you so much about whiskey, and you learn and you grow and you develop. And it's like, it's all about having fun. And then you get experiences because you're having fun. And so that's what I like, is that you all are not just resting it at education. It's creating the experience. So getting a people in the room with bourbon so that they can figure out what they like about it.
Right.
And most of the time what they like about it is the people.
Right.
And so I'm going to wrap it all up with this one big final thought process here. And it's really like, we just closed up 2022, and we're into 23, and this will release in February, but we have the whole year to look ahead to. In 2023, there's been some exciting things that'll probably happen, and we want to project forward here. So Steve, first, what's the most anticipated thing that you are looking forward to for Big Bourbon as you all think about 2023?
Well, that's a great question. The number one thing that I would like to do is to grow to 10,000 members, which is, if we're able to do that, we're close to 5,000. We become relevant to every distillery in the world. I can work with a distillery to lower their cost of customer acquisition by simply introducing them to 10,000 members, in that case, of people who've opted into my club and said, I love bourbon. And so I need to grow the membership, and it's grown very fast, and I want to grow it even faster. I've not put a penny into it. I put a lot of sweat equity into it, but I want to grow it. And I want to, I grew up in economic development. That was my career. And this is like economic development. If you don't have a road, if you don't have sewer systems in, if you don't have water, you can't get industry in. If you don't have access for these individuals, wherever they may be, to learn and to meet Peggy and to meet you and to meet Rob and to taste new things, and they don't have the opportunity to learn, they're going to go to the bar and they're going to get Jack Daniels again. Anywhere in the world, you're going to get the same 3 or 4. So it's providing the infrastructure and allowing people who are smart enough and wanting to learn about it that they can find you out on the internet, the ability to jump in and have fun and grow the club, and then more distilleries will want to get involved with us. We've got Blue Note and Penelope, we've done picks with out of town. They're coming into town now. We've got Garrison Brothers coming in. So all of a sudden, these people here, and they want to meet 4,000 people that want to spend money. They don't care what they look like. They know they have a wallet. So we want to grow the club. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. No, I think that's super exciting. And Danny and Michael, they're good people at Penelope. They're some of our favorite. So Rob, I'll turn it to you. Like, what's your all's big goal for 2023 for KBBG?
Not to sound cliche, but we're looking to launch into the Louisville market, and that would be a major game changer for us. So we're building the infrastructure now. We're looking into the other options of how to grow far and to extend our reach as well. And so we're looking at how to grow our classes, and streaming is obviously the way to go. So we're looking at that format. Man, I've got a really big event that I've been wanting to do for years. It's the Harlem Nights Casino Series.
Sounds interesting.
Sounds fun.
So yes. And so it's a big fundraiser that I've been working on. So I'm looking forward to that. Man, the real honest truth is that I'm really just enjoying the space that we're in currently. And I'm speaking from a bourbon community. I love to look around the room and just see the diversity in the room. I know when I first started bourbon, years ago, didn't know anything, just knew that I didn't know how to play golf. And so that was kind of my way into getting into the conversation.
Nice.
And so I love to see the diversity, and I love to see the young people that's joining the group. I've got some 22-year-old kids, man, and they know more than I know. And obviously they're listening to the bourbon guys because they're studying this stuff, man. And so I'm excited. I'm like the bull on the hill at this point, just looking down and enjoying watching how things are kind of unfolding. So it's been a good ride. We've been at it 4 years now, but it's been a good ride.
Yeah, no, it sounds like 23 has a lot of opportunities for you all to be successful. So look forward to that and watching you all continue to grow. So Peggy, last but not least, what's it look like? What's the horizon look like for Bourbon Women in 2023?
Well, I have to look back at 2020 because we were really fortunate. We actually had our biggest growth mode in 2020, believe it or not, due to virtual events. So we are kind of managing through that tremendous growth. So the foundation this year is our big focus, to grow the dollars in the foundation so we can do more of those scholarships for women. Not only that, but through mentorship of wanting to get into the industry, women who are interested in that. So the foundation, number one. Number two, aside from already doing our events, it's a well-oiled machine, but we had started our Peacock Preferred Club, which is our bottle club. And it's just been outrageously fun. It's all of women's palates that select the product. And we are getting rave reviews on the bottles we're selecting from the different distilleries. So I have to hats off to the industry of how many people have approached us to do barrel picks. And, so that's a real fundraiser for us as well.
No, I think that's all exciting because 2023 is a lot of optimism as we continue to go forward. And I think these are just the conversations that are starting to be had. And I'm glad that we're on the forefront of this and giving each of you all a forum to talk about, the ups and downs and the good and the bad, because if we don't talk about the bad, then we can't get better. I think, and that's the whole point of this conversation. So I really want to say thank you to Afton because she reached out on behalf of Big Bourbon to do this and just getting together with, you three has been awesome for Scott and I, and we're super excited for this podcast to launch. And so thank you all for joining tonight. We truly appreciate it. And thank you everyone for listening to this episode of the Bourbon Lens. We truly appreciate it. And if you are so inclined, please like and subscribe to our podcast. And then you can find out more about us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Bourbon Lens. And if you want to be a part of our community, we have a community. You can join us over at patreon.com/Bourbon Lens, where we get together monthly with our groups and create that opportunity to pull that red velvet rope back, as Steve mentioned, to meet with distillers and different people in the industry. So thank you all again. And until next time, cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.